So, as promised, I am going to explain why I think that the Pledge of Allegiance actually is currently existing in the United States is actually kind of a socialist spook, to be perfectly honest, right? Love my country, right? I do love my country. If you want some really cool history of the United States with regards to our symbols and I would suggest, for example, looking up the origin of the Star Spangled Banner. It actually is a pretty fucking cool story. And damn, did the people who actually the people who wrote this, the person who wrote the Star Spangled Banner actually believed what he was saying, because, and you could tell it because, again, he actually witnessed the sacrifice that people actually went through when he was writing it. When regards to the Pledge of Allegiance, I don't know that I trust a socialist to really truly be on board with the American project, right? Even if they are allegedly a quote-unquote Christian socialist, I don't believe that you can really be consistently a Christian and a socialist at the same time. A distributist, sure, and technically socialism is a form of distributism, but not all forms of distributism are, equally compatible with Christianity. So we will go through and I'll just explain. We'll read the different versions of the Pledge of Allegiance, because it was originally proposed in the version that we might recognize now in 1892, and it went under a couple of revisions, and you might notice a couple things as we go through it a couple times, because there have been some significant changes, which, by the way, are already underlined, so, I'm kind of retarded. I didn't exactly look at the screen before I started talking, right? But yeah, my main contention is the author, and I'm pretty sure he nested some of his ideas into the U.S. Pledge of Allegiance to change the way people thought about the country that they already loved living in, by the way. There was already a deep sense of patriotism in the United States before this guy wrote the Pledge of Allegiance, right? So you have to ask yourself the question, if there's already a deep sense of patriotism in the country, why do you need to write this spell, right? I don't know. Maybe I'm thinking too much into it. Maybe I'm seeing communists in my soup. It does happen sometimes, right? Sometimes sometimes you misjudge someone. But I think that there might be something to say about this. So let's go through this. So let's read the 1892, the original version. I pledge allegiance to my flag and the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now, you might notice that there is a significant portion of the Pledge of Allegiance that you may be expecting that's just not there, right? Because I think that some of these later additions are clarifications, but I think that the root here is a little bit potentially poisoned. Again, I might be wrong, and if you disagree with me, that's entirely fine. Explain why you disagree with me in the comments or in the chat, and I'll try to interact with it. I'll try to be as what would you say, open to correction as possible, because it's possible for me to get things wrong. So here we can already talk about, let's see, the one nation part is the part that really bothers me, right? Because this idea of uninationality is something that was completely alien to the Founding Fathers. Now, when the country was originally formed, this is a map of the United States and its original borders, right? From the original 13 colonies, including the part that we eventually seceded, we let Canada have. There's 13 colonies, right? Interestingly enough, these all had different religions. They all had different ways of organizing and running themselves. And, interestingly enough, they didn't trust each other, right? This is why the Articles of Confederation preceded the U.S. Constitution, is because the people that actually cooperated to fight off the British didn't necessarily agree with how the country that now existed should run. And they disagreed to such an extent that they basically neutered the federal government. And then eventually this caused some problems, because it turns out the culture that they were living in wasn't necessarily ready for the for the Articles of Confederation. Incidentally, everything that the anti-federalists were worried about actually fucking happened after the institution of the Constitution of the United States that we currently have. Just putting that out there. It turns out the anti-federalists were right in almost everything they said with their criticism of the federalists, but I digress, right? Can you tell I'm a huge 10th Amendment supporter, right? And yeah, I think we can just say, even if you look at the country now, we're not one people, right? There is not a lot in common between a New Yorker and a Texan, to be perfectly honest. I know this from experience. There's not a lot in common between a Californian and an Alaskan. Let's be perfectly honest here, right? We are very different peoples. We are very different. Different places have different religions. We have different customs. We have different, common senses. We are not one people. We are a republic that is composed of multiple peoples. And that's fine, because republics and empires historically have usually oftentimes been composed of multiple peoples, right? That's not all that unheard of. So the one nation part really bothers me. I get it. You're talking about like unifying everyone, but the fact of the matter is that there are multiple peoples that comprise this nation, and this seems to be a step towards the obliteration of distinctions of the particulars, which I've complained about beforehand in other videos, about obliterating distinctions between peoples for some ideological project, which this is exactly what we're talking about here. Indivisible, and this is another huge part. This is an immediate red flag for me. The indivisible part. When the United States was originally formed, even under the assumptions of the Constitution as originally formulated, it was understood that this right here was a voluntary association. If New York wanted to leave, New York could leave. No, wrong one. That was Massachusetts. If New York wanted to leave, New York could leave. If North and South Carolina wanted to leave, they could leave. Right? And in fact, the 10th Amendment of the United States, which was one of the original amendments to the U.S. Constitution, one of the things that had to be put in there so that all the founders would actually sign the fucking document, right? There are a number of amendments to the original document. That's why they're called amendments. Weren't originally in the document, had to be placed into the document, right? The 10th one is very explicit that that which does not belong explicitly to the federal government belongs to the people and the states thereof. What is one of those things, interestingly enough, that is not talked about anywhere in the Constitution of the United States? The Act of Secession. It talks about annexation. It does not talk about secession. Secession is the right of every single individual state. Under a constitutionalist reading of the United States Constitution, not influenced by Reconstructionist reinterpretations of the Constitution, if Hawaii wants to secede and become a kingdom again, the people of Hawaii have that right to do so. But the path of federalization is where all the states lost their right to the 10th Amendment, right? It's not that the federal government actually respects the rights of the states themselves either, right? The federal government also, for example, Congress, when they took in Tejas, the Spanish, speaking state of Tejas, which, by the way, I'm entirely for, because Tejas fought for independence against Mexico so it could eventually become American. There's a whole complicated history about that, but yes, that's why Texas had, fought its war of independence. They joined. The Congress agreed to annex Texas under the agreement that Texas, without consent of Congress, could split itself apart into 5 separate states. And I have been a Texas divisionist for quite a while, because I understand if we can split Texas into 5 separate states, then we can we can absolutely use that particular strategy to take a far stronger control of the House and the Senate. I am very well aware of this. I'm a strategic divisionist, and I don't think that the federal government is going to peacefully let that happen, but I think we could fight like hell. Let's see. But anyway, long story short. So yeah, the indivisible part right here. This is extremely dangerous to me. This is a complete breakaway from the original founding idea of what the United States, capital, a state is a country. The United States of America actually is, right? This is a complete breakaway from the founding principles. Hold on, let me catch up with chat. The Mind of Raw said we are multicultural by design. I mean, we all have very similar cultures, right? But yeah, you're right. Again, the culture of Texas is not the same as the culture of Massachusetts, which is not the same as Florida, and not the same as Hawaii, which is not the same as Alaska, and that's fine. We can actually get along with each other because of the 10th Amendment. We don't, under 10th Amendment, constitutionalism, it turns out the New Yorker wouldn't have that much say over what happens over Texas, and that's entirely fine. I find it very odious that, again, I have to listen to the opinions of a New Yorker or a Californian through the voting process over my state. And I would also find it equally odious that they would have to suffer my opinions as a Texan over their state. Right? It does cut both ways, to my opinion. So, like, right off the bat, I'm just like fucking alarm bells when I hear this, right? Just because I'm familiar with the founding era of the United States. This is incongruous with the foundational principles of the United States. The one nation, indivisible. That's already a huge break from reality. And we can't interface with the reality if we're not willing to look reality in the face, right? Philip says, was that a path to the federalization that happened at the beginning of the 1990s? 1900s. Federalization, so the Constitution was the beginning of the path to federalization. It didn't have to be, but again, if like all the anti-federalist critiques actually turned out to be true, it seems that, again, it might have been an error to have the current Constitution formulated the way that it was. I actually agree with Kirsche that if the Constitution, that the Constitution isn't a sacred document, right? It is a pragmatic document. Lysander Spooner actually, hold on, I'm gonna have to pull out the Lysander Spooner quote. Because this is something that we might actually have to seriously consider, not just about the Constitution per se, but other aspects of the way that we run things. So Lysander Spooner is famous for saying, the Constitution has no inherent authority or obligation. It has no authority or obligation at all, unless it's a contract between man, and it does not, okay, so this is the wrong one, but this is also true. And it does not so much as even purport to be a contract between persons not existing. Here's the one I was looking for, my bad. Sorry, momentary point of retardation on my end, right? So here it is. But whether the Constitution really be one thing or another, this much is certain, that it has either authorized such a government as we have had, or it has been powerless to prevent it. In either case, it is unfit to exist. I actually think that he might be onto something, right? I actually think that Lysander Spooner, actually, if you read Lysander Spooner, he's just like objectively correct in most of the things he says. But, yeah, so I do think that maybe we need to look at, because the founding document of the United States is not the Constitution, it's the Declaration of Independence. And you can tell this because you have to ask, where does the Constitution get its authority to, get its authority? Because it didn't get its authority from the Articles of Confederation. So what's the line of continuity by which the people underneath the Articles of Confederation and the Constitution of the United States are one people in an unbroken line, right? Well, the answer to that is the Declaration of Independence, because the Declaration of Independence actually outlines and gives the ontological reasoning behind the authority of the revolutionaries to actually split from the British Empire. It's in the preamble of the Declaration of Independence, right? Where do we get this right? It is in nature's law and nature's God, right? That man has there's almost a mandate of heaven reconstructed in the Declaration of Independence. That is the justification for the existence of the United States. So whenever we're judging the Constitution or the Articles of Confederation or some other document that we may very well have, right? It has to be judged in light of the actual founding document of the spirit and existence of the United States, which is the Declaration of Independence. And I do think that the modern Constitution is actually in line with the Declaration of Independence. The problem is that it has been abused in such a way that it is functionally impotent, right? And we all know it's functionally impotent. But anyway, let's continue. Let's see, Crimson Rain says, then there's organizations like the ATF. Oh yeah, the ATF is a wildly unconstitutional organization. Keanu says, well, I missed quite a bit. Fair enough. My PC is acting up. That's also fair. So, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. So, my question is, let's clarify what the all means, right? Like, obviously, justice for all is absolutely fine, right? Liberty for all, also fine, that's fair. But when the Declaration of Independence says, we the people, right? It is very clearly and very obviously, and you can tell this because you can also read the ancillary texts by the founding fathers, right? That when it refers to we the people, it means the people of the United States of America, not some random fucking illegal who, is born on American soil by parents who shouldn't have been here, right? I will probably read that entire Clarence Thomas dissent on stream at some point, just not right now, right? I've already apparently mismanaged my time, so I'm going to be a little late for the collab with Doctor of Insanity. Okay, so that's my criticism of this original one. Is you have to remember, I'm taking this from the perspective of what who was it? I fucking hold on. I actually had this in a song. I can't remember who said it. Give me one moment to look this up. It's a pope. I remember the quote. I just don't remember which pope it actually is the one who said it. Okay, hold on. I'm gonna have to apparently specify pope. Here we go. Son of a bitch. Okay, I'm just gonna have to go through it because I'm pretty sure I have it on my song. Give me one moment. Long story short, when I can actually find the thing, right? The idea is that there is no greater danger than true Catholic doctrine preached with a drop of heresy, right? Because that heresy is damaging to the spirit and soul of the person who believes it, right? But the thing is you can couch that drop of poison, right, under a more pleasant guise, like again in water or wine. Okay, let's see. I can fucking find this, right? Give me one moment. Okay, so the worst kind of heretic is the one who, while teaching mostly true Catholic doctrine, found it, adds a word of heresy like a drop of poison in a cup of water. Again, you can just modify this to constitutional law. The worst kind of ruling is the one that, while teaching mostly true constitutional principles, adds a word of unconstitutionality like a drop of poison in a cup of water. It does cut both ways, right? So, and right here we have exactly that, where it's again, one nation and indivisible are not small drops. These are huge, hugely poisonous ideas added to the American project. Sorry, I'm eating chicken. So we already have that, and I don't trust Bellamy either, right? Because I've already said, man's Christian socialist, right? Christianity and socialism have competing eschatological theories, right? You can't be a Christian and a Marxist at the same time for a very simple reason, right? They have very different understandings of the end of history, right? The end of history in Christianity is Jesus comes back as God-man and judges the righteous from the unrighteous, splits the righteous from the unrighteous, and will rule for eternity, with the righteous, right? Whereas, the Marxist view is that the individual man will be sublated out of existence, right? He will be crushed into non-being, and that all that will exist is the collective conscience of man after learning that he is a collective entity instead of a individual entity. There will be no more selfishness because there will be no more individuality in the post-Marxian, in the Marxian worldview, right? It's a world where, again, you as an individual have to undergo sublation, have to be subject to Aufhebung, which is why, again, Marxism is a intrinsically malevolent worldview. But, again, I digress. So, in 1892, we have a revision to the original version, right? I pledge allegiance to my flag and to the republic for which it stands. Let's see. So yeah, we just added a to here, right? We're splitting the infinitive, for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all, right? And again, I'm fine with liberty and justice for all, but it's the one nation thing where it's this kind of seems like a really small. It seems like a step towards the Hegelian project of global homogenization. it turns out it was a step in the global homogenization path, right? 1923 to 1924. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And here is kind of an interesting thing, right? So here we're actually creating a distinction between the United States, right? Because here it just said the republic. The republic is obviously referring to the United States. But here we now have to clarify that we're talking about the United States as the republic, but we're still keeping a degree of separation. So the United States and the Republic are separate reference. They're not actually identical. They are meaningfully distinct from each other, which is an interesting change. I don't know. This one might just be one that was made. I don't know why this one was made. I'd have to look into it. But yeah, in 1924 to 1954, we had I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. So here it's like it was just the United States. Now it's the United States of America. Again, it just seems like an unnecessary change. If we were going to use a pledge, the Republic obviously refers to the United States and obviously to America specifically, right? And here's the interesting part, because most people don't know that originally, under God wasn't actually in the Pledge of Allegiance. Funny enough, I've heard people say that they don't really care about the socialism part because Bellarmine was actually a Baptist. And it's kind of interesting that a Baptist, right, would put the political part first and foremost without the theological blessing, right? Especially when it turns out that the entire justification for the United States existing in the first place under its own documentation is again nature's law and nature's God. That the law of God actually justifies the right of the American to break away from the British, right? So it took all the way from 1892 to 1954 to put under God. And let's be fair, the only part people bitch about nowadays is under God, right? Because cringe atheists who don't know anything about history will bitch and moan and say, oh, it's under God, it's an establishment of religion. No, it's not. It's literally, I have actually no problem with the under God part because, again, the preamble of the Declaration of Independence, let's actually open that up. I know that we can actually just read the preamble. Okay. How the fuck does the Declaration of Independence from Mexico come up before the Declaration of Independence of America? What the fuck? Okay. I hate Wikipedia with a passion. Okay. Here we go. United States Declaration of Independence. Which is also, again, called, and this is actually correct, the Unanimous Declaration of the 13 United States of America. So, interesting, right? Interesting. What was declaring secession, right? The 13 United States of America. Not one United States, the 13 United States of America. It's almost as if the one nation part is a spook to destroy the American project. But anyway, I digress, right? I might just have to pull this up on Congress. Yeah, I'm just going to pull this up on Congress. Fuck it. Okay. So let's pull this up. That's study.com. I don't need that. National Archives, a transcription. Here we go. Here we go. This first paragraph will explain to you where the authority of the American to split from the British Empire actually came from, right? It's almost as if it was like forefronted in the minds of the people who fucking seceded, right? So, the unanimous declaration of the 13 United States of America, not one America, the 13 United States of America. When in the course of human events, it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with one another. Yeah, they do say the one people here, but again, it's 13 separate states. And to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them. By the way, nature's God is used here because some of the founders were deists. That's fair. But that being said, the vast majority of the founders were actually explicitly Christians, right? Like Samuel Adams was an example of one of these people who was very explicitly, very obviously Christian, and it actually motivated his abolitionist work. But anyway, to which the laws of nature and nature's God entitled them. A decent respect to the opinions of mankind required that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. So yeah, again, nature's law and nature's God are foundational to the right of America to exist as they are, right? What do those laws entail? We hold these truths to be self-evident, without need of justification. All men are created equal. Now, equal here does not mean what the communists think it means, right? But anyway, that they are endowed by their creator, again, with certain unalienable rights. Among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So any constitutional amendment that bridges this should be seen as an illegitimate constitutional amendment, because the Constitution only exists by virtue of the authority of the Declaration of Independence. So, so long story short, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. So there's a give and take here, right? The state provides for these rights, but at the same time, the state is an obligation to the people that it's providing for these rights, right? So there's a mutualism that is understood to exist here. That whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. So here's the function of the state: safety and happiness, and to secure the rights, which were life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Happiness here, by the way, is eudaimonia, right? These were people educated in Aristotelian philosophy. They would have been thinking of eudaimonia, like the well-beingness of spirit. So yeah, long story short, I'm not going to go through the whole declaration. I might actually read the entire Declaration of Independence on a different video. That actually seems like it would be pretty fun, and like do a whole commentary on that. But it's just, I hope that explains why I actually think we need a better Pledge of Allegiance, and I actually think that the pledge that we have been given by Bellamy has not been redeemed by the clarifications in it. Because we already have a fucking great national anthem, right? We already have the Star Spangled Banner is a fucking banger of a song, right? It's absolutely semi-miraculous origin story. Let's be perfectly honest, right? The Constitution worked up until it fucking didn't, right? The Declaration of Independence is still a amazing document, and as Yanuka 12 said right there, it's like, I love America, right? Yeah, America is still a country with all of its flaws that is still worthy of love and adoration, of admiration, and we should, as Americans, we should actually want to fight to keep our nation something that can be admired by the rest of the world for being a beacon of freedom and goodness, right? But I do suspect that the Pledge of Allegiance is a spell articulated to undermine that effort. That's just me. If you disagree, that is something you can disagree with me on. I know the founders had a bit of an issue with, oaths, the taking of oaths instead of just acting on duty, right? Because there's a difference between signaled virtue, saying something, versus, for example, actually doing something. What's going on? I'm recording this in a video. You can watch this later if you want to catch up. I'm giving my own personal reason why I actually don't think that the U.S. Pledge of Allegiance is in good faith, right? That may sound like an insane take. I know. I'm very well aware. It sounds like an insane take. But if you give me the time, I do believe I have made at least a compelling case as to why I think this is the case, right? I actually think we need a better Pledge of Allegiance that better conforms to the principles of the Declaration of Independence and the original concept and the original project of the Founding Fathers. That's just my idea. And I think that this actually has a number of areas where it just totally breaks away from that project. When did the expression "the United States of America" become the when did the expression "the United States of America" became "the United States of America is"? You know what? That's a good point. That took me a bit to understand what you were asking about. That's actually a really good question. I'll have to look that up. I don't have an answer for you right now. So that will be it for my screed on the Pledge of Allegiance. I hope everyone in the United States is going to have a lovely 4th of July, right? Again, as much as I have an issue with this particular part of the culture, it's not that I don't think we can have a pledge. It's just I think that this is a very poorly worded pledge, to be perfectly honest. I think it actually is contrary to the spirit of the American. But that's just me, right? So let me know what you think in the comment section, including if you think I'm a retard, right? Then let me know in the comment section. But I will see y'all in the next video.